Okay, hello and welcome. This is the first in a whole series of videos we're going to be uploading based on some of our publications. So these are super short videos to help to inform you a little bit about truffle ecology and various areas of truffle science. And in the comments section just below this video we'll post links to the papers which will be free to access. So today I'm going to talk about truffles and insects, and I should also mention that I run a small company called Mycorrhizal Systems, and I'm also honorary professor at the University of Stirling. And through Mycorrhizal Systems, we help people to grow truffles in the UK, but also elsewhere. So we produce the first cultivated truffles in England, Wales and Scotland on these dates, but we also produce in America, in Ireland, in Macedonia, the Netherlands, South Africa, a whole range of countries. So we help people internationally to do this. But also as part of our activities, the bulk of my time actually is focused on research, and that's what I'm going to discuss now. So to start off with, this talks about invertebrates or insects and truffles, and some of you will probably find insects in your truffle orchards, so you might be interested in what role they play in their ecology. So we're going to delve into that a little bit. But to start off with, to frame this, we're going to talk about truffles in general. And truffles, of course, have got this very aromatic, pungent aroma. And there's a very obvious reason for this. Because truffles form below ground, and the truffle is just the fruiting body of the truffle fungus. So it's full of all the truffle seeds, if you like, of the organism, or what we would call spores. And because it's forming below ground, it's got no way to easily spread these spores. So it depends on mammals and in some cases birds and other animals to eat them and move along, defecate and release the spores. So this is how they spread the spores around. And this is important for two reasons. So this is a diagram from one of our papers here, and we'll provide the reference. So you can see, wrong side here. So mammals and birds, for example, eat the truffles. They deposit the spores. You can see here the spore germinates, and then it can do one or two things. It can either form the maternal contribution, and that's forming new colonies of the truffle fungus in time and space, so spreading out and forming new populations, or it forms what's called the parental contribution. And this is like, the way to think of it is like pollination in plants. So you need these two mating types to come together, to interact, and that's how you form the truffles themselves. So when you've got a truffle colony, you need the other mating partner, like pollination, to come together, and then they produce the truffles themselves, and that happens annually. So this is what we understand about truffle ecology. But there's a problem. So when we look at the genetic data, and I'll leave the text up here so you can read this, but I'll say this in slightly simpler terms. When we look at the genetic data, it doesn't fit that model. So it doesn't fit the distribution of spores over a long distance by mammals and, for example, wild boars, which can roam several kilometers a night. But it does fit the distribution over a much shorter distance. So something's wrong there, something's different when we combine our ecological understanding versus what we actually observe in the wild. So that kind of frames the problem, and this is where I come to talk about invertebrates. This is an image I took off one of our productive orchards in America, so this is quite an old truffle. But you can see here there's a little millipede at the bottom, but also at the top there's an isopod, or what you might know as a pillbug, or what we would call a woodlouse in the UK. And I'd find these frequently with truffles in the US and in Europe. And I didn't really know why. We don't know whether they're sheltering in there, whether they're feeding off something else in there, or if they're eating the truffles themselves. So during COVID lockdown, I was trapped at home with my kids. We were looking at things to do because they were bored and I wanted to educate them. So we had truffles, which were sent in, and we devised an experiment to see what the woodlice are doing with the truffles. So we gathered some woodlice from the garden and we fed them truffles, and this is what we found. The image with the high density of black blobs, those dark blobs are actually the truffle spores, and they're in a protective sac, which we call an ascus. So you can see each of those sacs has got 1 to 4 spores in, so it's like a protective sac. 30 hours after we introduce truffle to the enclosure, when we collect their poop, the poop was completely stuffed full of truffle spores. So it showed quite clearly that they're eating these truffles quite ferociously and preferentially, and then they're depositing these spores. And the fecal pellet is just a mass of these spores. And interestingly, they're undamaged, so it looks like they're viable. So then we thought, that's cool. What happens if we remove the truffle? So then we removed the truffle, and at that point we wanted to know how long, and we wanted to know, would they still deposit spores? So 30 hours after we removed the truffle, we checked the poop, and again, you can see these dark blobs there. So again, there were still spores and undamaged spores in the poop. And at this stage, my son was really interested, so we thought, how long is it that they carry these spores in the digestive tract after we remove the truffle, and how long will that process take? How important are they really to truffle ecology? So every day after we removed the truffle, we collected the feces or the poop, and we checked with the microscope to see if there were spores or not. You can see here is a graph from the paper we subsequently published on this, and in the paper there's lots more discussion, lots more data, lots more information, and it's free to access, and I'll put a link up for this paper, so feel free to go and have a read. But days are along the bottom, and pellet quantity is across the top, and you can see at day 1, 100% of the pellets contain spores. Pellets mean poop, fecal pellets. But then all the way up to day 18, we were still finding 25% of those pellets that the woodlice were dropping still contained spores, which is incredible. So 18 days after they stopped feeding. And at that point, we got bored and stopped the experiment and freed the woodlice. And we repeated this several times, actually, to get consistent data. And then we worked out that 10 woodlice will preferentially, 10 woodlice we had in our different containers, they were consuming and depositing 8,000 to 16,000 individual spores every 24 hours. And here's an image of one of the spores in the top right hand corner. This is unusually a damaged one, so you can see it's slightly split, but most of them were completely complete and in a good condition. So I think this really hints at the importance of invertebrates in spreading spores and helping the truffle colonies produce more truffles annually, which is super important in truffle cultivation. So when we look again at this ecological diagram, I think the invertebrates, here we've circled in red, they fit within genetic evidence, they fit with lab-based evidence now, and I think they're probably actually really, really important in truffle ecology. Not just in terms of forming new populations, but in terms of forming more truffles. So in the natural environment, they're probably very, very important for this. And then in truffle orchards, they could be really important as well. And certainly in some of the most productive orchards I see, there's a dominance of soil invertebrates. And these spores, you can add them manually. So if you don't have many invertebrates, you can speed up this process by adding spores manually to your soil, and we can guide you on how to do that. But I think it just hints at some of the ecology of truffles, which we haven't really known until relatively recently, and just invertebrates are often seen as a pest, but in this context we can see here that probably they're actually of some benefit in a lot of cases. So that's one paper, and I'll upload some more videos shortly of other papers from climate change, from metagenomics, and all kinds of areas of truffle cultivation. And just to finish up, we've just opened the National Truffle Centre here on the Isle of Bute, where we have our DNA sequencing lab, fungi culturing facilities, and this is some of our academic team based at the University of Stirling and also mycorrhizal systems here on the island. And you're welcome to visit. We're running open days and learning days here on the Truffle Centre, and the link for that will be in the video as well. So that's it. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned for further videos. Thank you.